All right, I'm going to try to explain one of the ways that I am constantly reminded that I am surveilled. And it sounds really goofy. It sounds like it would be impossible for somebody to do, but I've been experiencing it for at least the last year. Um, so, a targeted individual is monitored, surveilled, stalked, harassed 24/7. Every day of your life, everywhere you go, everything you do. Um, you are you are let know you are made aware that everything you do, everything you say is monitored, and that is uh, conveyed back to you on a daily basis, to make you feel uncomfortable, to make you feel watched, to make you feel surveilled. Your personal space is being invaded, and one of the things that happens now, I have almost 16,000 items in our eBay store now. Built up over time, and most of them are vintage and collectible baseball caps, other kinds of hats and stuff like that. It's just kind of where I ended up going with this whole thing, even though I know a lot about real antiques, collectibles. Not that these aren't real, but they're just, it's baseball hats, not too big of a deal like a mid-century modern furniture set, that's worth $10,000 or something like that. It's not a big dollar item, small dollar items, uh, and with large volume. So conversations that I have throughout the day with my girlfriend, with my kids, with anybody that I talk to, we'll be talking about certain things, talking about things on my social media with other targeted individuals, other people that are messaging me, stuff like that. And the same day or the next day, after I have these conversations, one of the items in my store, now think if there's 15,000 hats, there's all kinds of different topics, different logos, different things in the store. So it'd be easy to go into the store, purchase one of those items with some of the government funded money from this program, to convey to me that my conversation is being listened to. So one of the things that I've been talking about lately is how several of my family members worked for Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Skunk Works, and that as soon as I realized I was targeted and I tried to contact some of these people, when I did, they performed what's called directed conversation on me. They did the same thing. They talked about things that nobody would know but myself in the conversation to make me feel uncomfortable. And then all of a sudden, not one of them will talk to me anymore. My mom will still talk to me, but it's really about nothing. I try to ask her questions, try to have a normal conversation, ask real questions. It's nothing but diversion, changing the subject. I ask about the school I went to, places people worked, things that happened, events that happened, and the conversation will change to something like, "Oh, I put a sweater on my dog the other day and walked him downtown." And, like, I just asked you about some child abuse that happened when I was a kid, and you want to change the subject to the dog sweater, which is not rational. So here's just a couple examples, and there's a few things here that I've been having conversations about. Now here's one of them. Just sold that hat yesterday. Now one of my friends lives in Chicago, actually, that has been gang stalked and targeted and gang stalked, gave me some information about Lockheed Martin, Skunk Works, and how some of this is connected, and sending other information. So this hat I actually liked, I didn't realize Lockheed Martin was involved in this whole thing. Allegedly, I can't say for sure, I don't have the proof yet, but so I always liked the SR-71. It's one of the greatest airplanes made in history, and I really don't know all my videos backwards. All my videos are backwards. Why is that? Maybe somebody can help me with that. So anyway, been talking about Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin Skunk Works hat shows up. SR-71. I used to watch that plane fly over at soccer practice when I lived near Edwards Air Force Base. It was pretty cool. Everybody else is playing soccer. I'm looking up at the SR-71 flying over my head. Always loved aviation. So there's that one. Here's another thing. We're talking about my niece. Her name is Aspen. And guess what hat sells? Aspen Music Festival School. All right. I've been talking to a friend of mine in the UK. He was a footballer. He was a really good footballer. You know, we call it soccer here. He calls me. He just did a video for me. Actually, he put together a video called Home Alone, uh, and put that on a thing called TI Television. And right after that conversation, this Liverpool Football Club hat sells. We have helicopters flying over the house. uh, Perfect timing with conversations we're having that are, important conversations. We'll have a helicopter fly low, really low over the house, shake the house, and there's an airport right over here, but the flight path didn't used to be directly over my house. And the more I investigated these situations, and the more that I am speaking out, the more airplanes and helicopters fly directly over my house, very low. You know, worked crash fire rescue at an airport for 5 years, and I know a little bit about flight paths and air traffic and stuff like that. My mom worked for the FAA for a long time, Federal Aviation Administration, and always been around aviation. And I've always been looking up in the sky, watching airplanes and flight patterns, stuff like that. These guys are going way too low. I mean, it shakes the paintings on my walls. And so we had one fly over last night, really low, shook the house, and then right after that, this Bell Helicopters hat sells. We were talking about Las Vegas, and an old friend of mine, right as I realized I was targeted last year and I started speaking out about this, invited me to Las Vegas the weekend of the Las Vegas shooting. Offered to pay for my room, told me to give me some money to help me get there, wouldn't have to take care of anything at all, just show up. And I was talking about that story. Guess what hat sells? LV, Las Vegas. And then here's another one. A guy on Twitter friended me that's got a bunch of Philadelphia Eagles stuff on his page. He's from Philadelphia, former pilot, patriot, MAGA kind of guy, looking into a lot of this stuff, truther kind of guy. And he friended me, retweeted some of my posts, and right after that, this Eagles hat sells. So, there's such thing as a coincidence every now and then. But after a year of that happening every single day, you realize that this is not a coincidence, that it's a way to intimidate me and let me know that all of my conversations and all of my transactions are being monitored. I don't mind the items selling because I need money to pay my bills, but it is a little aggravating. I don't know, I've gotten used to it now. I just try not to pay attention, but I just had a few of them here that were a pretty good example. And just thought I would give an example of that. So this is only one day, the ones that I just showed. And like I said, this happens every single day, every conversation I have. Most of the items that sell correlate to conversations that I've had in private, or through social media, private messenger, stuff like that. Yeah, I can't really explain that any more than that. That's just one very small part of the stalking and harassment. Harassment, that would be in the harassment category. So, just wanted to share that with everybody. I'm just kind of documenting some of the things. And now I want to point out that somebody that has never been through this kind of thing, that hasn't experienced this personally, it is very hard for them to believe. And I think that you should question what I'm saying, and I think you should maybe research more targeted individuals and listen to the ways that they are stalked and harassed. And a lot of us that are in communication with each other, that talk about a lot of the different skits and different instances that we are harassed, have a hard time explaining this because you do risk the chance of, not the chance, every time people trolling you, saying, because it gives them the perfect opportunity to say, oh, you're so paranoid. You think people buying hats in your store are, they're just buying those just to let you know? Well, no, I know this. After, like I said, after a year of this happening over. Okay, my last video about the communication through the hat store, how conversations that I have in private, on social media, private messaging with people that I'm networking with will come up the day of or the next day through one of the items that I have in my store. And I was giving some examples last time I was doing this video, the one I'm going to connect these two actually. And it's all over again here. And these are a little more vague, which I almost think is intentional, but I'll just start with, I'll just go through these real quick so it doesn't take too long. So some of the social media, some of the channels I'm watching, they keep talking about the Titanic going down in reference to different political stuff. You know, important people that have important information are getting taken out, and they've been referring to that as similar to the Titanic. You know, we're just talking about how this big wave comes down when you're targeted, and the toughest part is when they're building up slowly, building up slowly, building up slowly, and then the big wave crashes down, and you have to ride it out. Try not to lose it while you're going through that. And I was watching a video. This guy just surfed the largest wave ever in history in Brazil, and I was talking about that, like, well, that guy surfed that giant wave. If he would have fell, he would have died, but he just kept surfing and he made it through. You know, that day, this hat sold, Ron John's Surf Shop. A guy that I used to know when I met through antiquing, picking. When you do that kind of stuff, you just see kind of the same people out and about, because they're out looking for stuff all the time too, at auctions and garage sales, swap meets, stuff like that. You know, it's just kind of running into the same people. But this guy actually worked for us at our business. We had a pumpkin patch and a Christmas tree lot. We'd ship in pumpkins from Ripon, California, get a truckload, 40,000 pounds of them. And then we'd, after that, we'd leave the fence up for the business and sell Christmas trees. So, but that guy's name was Austin. He's actually had some contact with my mom recently, trying to give her some information to help my son with a couple things. His name was Austin. And then so that day that we're having the conversation, so this hat says Austin. I have been having a tough time sleeping lately. I won't explain exactly why, but I mean, just through a lot of the stress, and there's been some noise campaign kind of stuff around here. People having parties, cranking their music at like a concert volume till midnight. People riding up and down the street on dirt bikes after 10 o'clock, just right in front of the house, back and forth. And so, man, I sure am having a hard time sleeping. And we saw this hat that says Sleeper. Just having a conversation about one of my daughter's friends. Her dad's name is JJ. And actually a lot of the people that have been responsible for stalking and harassing me in my life, they have just happen to have the initials JJ. And that day we're having that conversation, I'm talking about JJ. That hat sells. I was talking about, well, these are two different things. I was talking about fishing in Tennessee, how I fish for largemouth bass, but my girlfriend has an old friend that thought he was a friend in her life, and his last name was Bass, and she was talking to me about that yesterday or the day before, and this hat, Bassmaster, sold. Now this is all within the last day or two. I was talking to my girlfriend last night about this daycare I went to back in the day called Town and Country. It was in Saugus, Newhall area by Valencia. We lived in Valencia, And after school, sometimes before school, after school, I would go to this place and I would talk about how I'd take my Transformers to this place. And I was talking about one called Optimus Prime, and I'm sure if anybody my age that had Transformers knew about Optimus Prime, and knows what Optimus Prime looks like. So that hat. So always talking about the police, different police, and yeah. Now this is probably a little bit of a stretch, but having a conversation about the police and how some of them are involved in organized stalking and harassment. The Monterey police hat sells. I was talking about San Francisco and how San Francisco is a really cool city. I was showing my girlfriend some old videos of skate footage. You'd go to San Francisco, or we would go to San Francisco, and go to these different skate spots and film, like the Clipper, the Presidio, stuff like that. Showed her pictures. The Presidio's right across from the Golden Gate Bridge, and then the San Francisco hat sells. I got up in the morning a couple days ago, and I said, "Man," or actually, my girlfriend went to give her a kiss, and she said, "Let me go brush my teeth. I might have dragon breath." And I said, "Yeah, me too." You know, just normal conversation that anybody would have. Me couple, it's waking up in the morning, and this hat sells dragons. I was talking about how my neighbors over here, this is all within the last couple days, last 2 or 3 days, that I was having these conversations and these hats have been selling. So I was talking about how my son and I were sitting on the front porch out here one day, and a car pulls up across the street. Our street ends at a T, and you go right down the street to go out of the neighborhood. Well, the house directly on the corner, there are some people that are from India, or that's their ethnicity is Indian, and they had some people pull up in a, well, not they did, but there were some people that pulled up in a silver car, paper license plate. They got out of the car and they had like these really puffy jackets on, and they ran into the house, and they looked like they were possibly relatives. So I didn't think too much of it, but then these people come running out of the house, and their jackets look a little bit bigger, and they've got clothes in their hands. And I started filming, and my camera wouldn't turn on until these people are driving away. But I got them driving away, and I got that license sticker, whatever they have on there. And I was talking about how when I gave the police my side of the story, what I saw, what I witnessed, they started questioning me like it was me that had done it. And that would be considered a breaking and entering. So right after I have that story, this BE hat sells. Another conversation we've had very recently, within the last couple days. My girlfriend wants to get a gym pass, go find a treadmill that we can bring here in the house and just get some exercise, because we don't get out a whole lot, and you know, people want exercise. Just feel better after you exercise. And right after that conversation, Gold's Gym hat sells. We went to the courthouse 2 days ago, and the courthouse is right by the Phoenix Suns stadium where they have basketball games. And I pointed out while we were down there, while we were turning the corner, and I said, "Oh, this is where the Phoenix Suns play." Phoenix Suns hat sells. For some reason, one of the things that we're always called, or there's constantly license plates or people messaging they're talking about something about a cat. Like when I purchased my 4Runner over at CarMax, I was in the finance department. I paid cash for my truck and for my 4Runner, and I was doing the paperwork to get the title and everything. And there was like 6 women back there, and they all walked while I was sitting at the counter, sitting there signing my paperwork. The lady I'm sitting across from mentions that her dad was in the FBI for some reason. I don't know why she told me that. She walks back and she talks to each one of these ladies, like whispers in their ear, and they all go back to the back of the office and have like a little group huddle, And she turns back and looks at me, and she goes, "Now you ladies know what a big cat looks like." No idea what she's talking about. Like a big cat? What does that mean? And we had a ton of people swerving in front of us, hitting the brakes, and their license plate starts with CAT. And we had a conversation about that. Like, what's the deal with the cat? I don't get it. So, of course, that day, cat hat sells. I was talking about how I worked at the Air National Guard, the 144th Fighter Wing in Fresno, California, and we have the active alert for the West Coast. So anytime there's an active alert for our jets to go up and go to the coast and escort down any unidentified aircraft, they call NORAD, or NORAD calls the fighter wing, let them know that there's an alert. So I was talking about Colorado, and this Colorado Springs hat sells. We're talking about Richie from Boston and how his videos are good, and a bunch of different stuff about Richie from Boston. Remember, this is all in the last couple days. All of these hats have just been in the last couple days, and you know, this isn't over a long period of time. This is just over the last couple days. I'm going to keep repeating myself, but it's really important to be explaining this. And this Boston hat sells. These, I'm not going to fully explain why these hats sells, but BJ Hughes, BJ, and this one, the Pokes, maybe a little more private than I want to go ahead and explain in detail. You go ahead and figure that one out on your own. Then I, on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel, just interviewed with him, and I was explaining a lot of the people that have died in my family that are close to me, that died in really odd ways, died young. And I talked about my cousin Valerie dying in a car accident in Seattle. Her friend got on the freeway driving the wrong way, and Valerie, for some reason, wasn't wearing her seatbelt. They hit head-on with somebody, and she was ejected out of the front window and died. And having that conversation, the Seattle hat sold. So, and then here's the only other two, and I can't figure out what these are. I mean, other than this. So this one is this hat says R on it, but it's the Reading Brooks. I was just talking about the shoes I wear. I have two pairs of shoes. They're really expensive. I got lucky and found them at Goodwill, and they're Brooks. They're running shoes, a couple $100 a pair, and I got them for like $10, something like that. So those are Brooks, and that hat sold. And I don't know what the deal with the Honda hat is. No idea. The only one I can't figure out. So, I mean, tell me that I would have a good enough imagination to come up with something for each one of these and be that paranoid and that delusional that something that I've just had a conversation with, a conversation that I've just had with somebody in private, something I was speaking about, correlates to every single one of these, except for one that I can't figure out. I don't know what the Honda thing is. Maybe just somebody actually wanted a Honda hat. So that's just an observation. Now this isn't recent. This hasn't just happened like the last couple days. This is every single day that I send out items. Personal conversations that I have, social media, phone conversations, everything correlates to items that I have sold. That's it. Just thought I would put that out there for documentation. I know the trolls will come out and say, wow, you are paranoid, but you know, after this has been happening for over a year, it's not paranoia, it's a pattern, and it's pretty easy to spot if you had to do that. Anybody that was doing my job, that was having certain conversations about things, certain things you're doing in your life, in private, and it's been happening for a year, you couldn't help but to notice that that's going on. So just documentation, like I said, observation, documentation. Have a good day.